The massive space station hung in orbit around Kepler Prime like a silver wheel spinning slowly against the stars. Jake Morrison adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one last time as he looked out the viewing port of the human shuttle. Behind him sat 12 other members of the Earth delegation, all carefully chosen for this moment that humanity had been working toward for 3 years. Today was supposed to be the day that changed everything for the human race. Today, Earth would finally join the Galactic Trade Consortium and take its place among the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. Jake had spent months preparing for these negotiations, studying alien customs and trade laws, learning the proper ways to address each species that made up the powerful Galactic Council. The shuttle docked with a soft thud, and Jake led his team through the airlock into the station proper. The corridors were huge, built to accommodate species much larger than humans. Tall, blue-skinned Zephyrians walked past with their long, graceful strides. Short, squat hegemony traders scuttled by on 6 legs, their shell-like backs gleaming. Under the bright lights, other aliens that Jake recognized from his studies moved through the station with the confidence of beings who owned the galaxy. A Zephyrian aide met them at the entrance to the council chambers. She was nearly 8 feet tall with silver hair that flowed like water down her back. Her large, dark eyes looked down at Jake with what might have been amusement. "Ambassador Morrison," she said in perfect English, though her voice had a musical quality that no human throat could produce. "Chancellor Veltar is ready to receive your delegation. Please follow me." The council chamber was enormous, with a high domed ceiling that showed a real-time view of the space around the station. Arranged in a circle were the seats of the 12 most powerful species in the galaxy. At the center sat Chancellor Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire, his pale blue skin almost glowing under the chamber lights. To his right was the massive form of Trademaster Kixmuth, representing the Hegemony Collective. The creature looked like a cross between a crab and a spider, with multiple arms that moved constantly as he worked on several data tablets at once. Jake walked to the small podium. In the center of the circle, feeling very aware of how tiny he must look to these beings, the other human delegates took seats in a small section that had been added to the chamber just for this meeting. "Welcome, humans," Chancellor Veltar said, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. "We are pleased that you have finally reached a level of development that allows for this discussion." Jake nodded politely. "Thank you, Chancellor. Earth is honored to be considered for membership in the Galactic Trade Consortium. We believe humanity can contribute significantly to the galactic community." Several of the council members made sounds that Jake realized were laughter. Trade Master Kixmuth's multiple arms clicked against his shell in what Jake had learned was the hegemony equivalent of chuckling. "Contribute," repeated Chancellor Veltar, and now Jake could hear the amusement in his voice. "Yes, I suppose you could say that humans will contribute." The Chancellor gestured, and a holographic document appeared in the air above Jake's head. The text was in standard galactic script, which Jake could read thanks to months of study. "These are the terms of Earth's admission to the consortium," Chancellor Veltar announced. "As a junior species, humanity will be granted mining rights in 3 systems. Tau 7, Epsilon 12, and Gamma 19. All mining operations must use consortium-approved equipment and techniques. 40% of all extracted materials will be provided to senior species as tribute for the privilege of consortium membership." Jake felt his heart sink as he read further. The terms were worse than anything he had imagined. Humans would be forbidden from developing faster-than-light communication technology, quantum computers, or advanced weapon systems. All human ships traveling outside the Sol system would require consortium escorts. Earth's government would be required to submit annual reports on population, resources, and technological development to the Council. "These terms," Jake said carefully, "seem rather restrictive for a full member species." Chancellor Veltar's large eyes widened in what Jake now recognized as surprise. "Full member? Oh, Ambassador Morrison, I fear there has been a misunderstanding. Humans are not being offered full membership. These are the terms for associate status, suitable for a species that has only recently achieved interstellar travel." "Trade." Master Kixmuth's arms clicked more rapidly. "Your species has potential, humans, but you must understand your place. You have no significant military force, your technology is primitive compared to ours, and your lifespans are barely long enough to train for basic consortium service. These terms are quite generous, considering." Jake looked around the circle of alien faces, searching for any sign of sympathy or understanding. He found none. These beings saw humanity as something between pets and slaves, useful for manual labor, but not worthy of respect or equal treatment. "We had hoped," Jake said slowly, to negotiate terms that would allow humanity to grow and develop alongside our galactic neighbors. We have much to offer beyond simple mining operations, such as, asked a delegate from the stellar communes, a crystalline being whose voice sounded like wind chimes. Human creativity and adaptability have led to innovations in medical technology, engineering solutions, and tactical thinking that have proven valuable in our limited interactions with consortium species, Jake replied, the chamber filled with the sounds of alien laughter. Chancellor Veltar raised one long-fingered hand for silence. Ambassador Morrison, you must understand that every species believes their particular traits are special and valuable. The galaxy has managed quite well for millions of years without human creativity. We offer you a place in galactic civilization, but it must be appropriate to your capabilities and station. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. These beings had never intended to treat humanity as equals. They saw humans as a convenient source of labor, nothing more. Perhaps we could discuss modifications to the terms, Jake said, making one last attempt at diplomacy. The terms are not negotiable, Trademaster Kixmoth declared. Junior species do not negotiate with their betters. You will accept these generous terms, or you will return to your little system and remain isolated until you develop proper humility. Chancellor Veltar leaned forward in his seat, and now Jake could see the contempt in those dark eyes. Really, Ambassador, your species should be grateful for any consideration at all. Most civilizations must prove themselves worthy over centuries before being granted even associate status. We are offering humanity a chance to serve alongside your betters immediately. You are useful pets, nothing more, but pets can be quite valuable when properly trained. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Useful pets. That was how these ancient, powerful civilizations saw humanity. Not as equals, not as partners, not even as junior colleagues. As pets. Jake stood quietly for a long moment, feeling the eyes of 12 alien species on him. In the observation gallery above, he knew Captain Lisa Chun and the crew of the UES Defiance were watching. The human fleet waited just outside the station, hoping for good news to take back to Earth. Finally, Jake reached down and gathered his papers from the podium. He closed his briefcase with a soft click that seemed to echo in the silent chamber. The United Earth Alliance respectfully declines all offers and withdraws from these negotiations, Jake said, his voice steady and calm. Good day. He turned and walked toward the exit, his delegation falling in behind him. Behind them, the chamber erupted in surprised chatter as the aliens tried to process what had just happened. As they reached the door, Jake heard Chancellor Veltar call out, Ambassador Morrison, surely you cannot be serious. Your species needs galactic civilization far more than we need you. Jake paused in the doorway and looked back at the circle of powerful aliens. We will manage, he said simply, and walked out. 3 weeks had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council chambers, and Chancellor Veltar was beginning to feel the first stirrings of unease. He stood in his private office aboard the council station, staring out at the empty space where the human fleet had been anchored. The ships had vanished within hours of Ambassador Morrison's dramatic exit, leaving only the faint traces of their engine signatures. At first, the council members had found the whole situation amusing. Trademaster Kixmoth had made several jokes about stubborn pets who refused their food, and the other delegates had laughed along. They all expected the humans to return within days, perhaps a week at most, desperate for any scrap of galactic acceptance. But 3 weeks had passed, and there had been no word from Earth. Veltar's aide, a young Zephyrian named Kesara, entered, his office carrying a data tablet. Her usually calm expression was troubled. Chancellor, we have received several reports that you should see, she said. Placing the tablet on his desk, Veltar glanced at the screen and frowned. The first report was from the Kepler mining facility in the Outer Rim. The facility manager, a practical hegemony administrator named Voxtel, had sent an urgent message about operational delays. The human maintenance crews have not reported for duty in 18 days, the report read. Automated systems are beginning to fail, and our technical staff cannot perform the complex repairs that the humans handled. We estimate a 20% drop in productivity if this continues. The next report was similar from a trading post near the vegan systems. The human logistics coordinators who had been managing cargo transfers between different alien ship designs had simply vanished. Without their expertise in adapting various species technologies to work together, shipments were backing up and trade routes were slowing down. Veltar scrolled through more reports, each one describing similar problems. Humans, it seemed, had been quietly integrated into dozens of operations across consortium space. Their absence was creating ripple effects that no one had anticipated. Meanwhile, In the Sol system, Admiral Frank Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Sovereign, watching as another massive cargo hauler prepared to jump to hyperspace. The ship was loaded with manufacturing equipment, medical supplies, and the personal belongings of human families who had been living and working throughout Consortium space. Operation Clean Slate is proceeding on schedule, reported Commander Stevens from the communications station. All human personnel have been evacuated from Consortium territories. The last group from the Altair Research Station will be home tomorrow. Rodriguez nodded, watching as the cargo ship's engines flared bright blue and the vessel vanished into hyperspace. For months, humans had been quietly preparing for this possibility. While Ambassador Morrison had been training for diplomatic negotiations, military planners had been developing contingency plans for complete withdrawal from galactic civilization. The Admiral activated his personal communicator and contacted Dr. Amanda Bell, who was overseeing the technical aspects of the withdrawal from her laboratory on Luna. How are we progressing with the technology recall? Rodriguez asked. Dr. Bell's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. We have successfully removed all human design components from joint projects, she reported. The fusion core modifications we provided to consortium ships have been remotely deactivated. The medical nanobots we developed for the Altarian plague have been recalled. The quantum computer interfaces we built for the Zephyrian Research Network have been shut down. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Any complaints? Plenty, Dr. Bell said with a slight smile. The Zephyrians are particularly upset about losing 30% efficiency in their deep space communications network. Apparently, our primitive modifications were the only thing keeping their ancient systems running smoothly. What the Galactic Council had failed to understand was that humans had not been idle during their 3 years of contact with alien civilizations. While other species saw humans as simple workers suitable only for basic tasks, human engineers and scientists had been quietly solving problems that had plagued galactic civilization for centuries. The hegemony mining equipment that constantly broke down in harsh environments now ran smoothly thanks to human maintenance techniques. Zephyrian computers that had been limited by their ancient programming now operated with revolutionary efficiency thanks to human software improvements. Trade disputes between species with incompatible technologies had been resolved by human mediators who could understand and adapt to different ways of thinking on Earth. President John Carter stood before the United Earth Assembly, addressing representatives from every nation and colony. The assembly hall was packed, with millions more watching the broadcast across human space. My fellow humans, Carter began, his voice carrying the weight of history. 3 weeks ago, our diplomatic mission to the Galactic Council ended in a way none of us expected. We were offered the chance to join galactic civilization, but only as servants. We were told we could have a place among the stars, but only if we accepted being treated as useful pets. The assembly was silent, hanging on every word. We tried to join their community as equals, Carter continued. They wanted us as servants. We choose neither. Humanity will forge its own path among the stars, and we will do so with our dignity intact. Carter activated a holographic display, showing star charts of the galaxy. Several systems near the rim glowed with blue markers. Our exploration fleets have made contact with several species beyond consortium space, he announced. These civilizations have welcomed human contact without demanding tribute or submission. They seek partnerships, not masters and servants. Captain Bobby Turner, commander of the exploration vessel UES Pioneer, was at that moment establishing humanity's first independent colony beyond consortium space. The planet they had found was rich in rare minerals and perfectly suited for human habitation. Located in a system that the Galactic Council had dismissed as worthless and dangerous, Turner stood on the bridge of his ship, watching as the first human shuttles landed on the planet's surface. The world had no name in any galactic database, so the colonists had decided to call it New Hope. Sir, reported Lieutenant Hayes from the communications station, we are receiving signals from 3 different alien species in nearby systems. They are requesting diplomatic contact, Turner smiled. These species had been ignored by the Galactic Council, dismissed as too primitive or too troublesome to bother with. But they were eager to meet humans who approached them as equals rather than subjects. Back on the Council station, Chancellor Veltar was reading another disturbing report. The Corvan Republic, one of the Council's most important member species, had quietly begun sending diplomatic messages to Earth. The Corvans had been impressed by human problem-solving abilities and were interested in establishing direct trade relationships. This is concerning, Trade Master Kicksmith said during an emergency council session. If other species begin to bypass consortium trade networks to deal directly with humans, it could destabilize our entire economic structure. Surely they will. Return, insisted the delegate from the stellar communes. No species can survive long outside galactic civilization. They need our technology, our protection, our guidance. But privately, Veltar was beginning to wonder if they had made a serious mistake. Reports kept coming in of human innovations that had been quietly keeping consortium operations running smoothly. Without human maintenance, several major installations were beginning to fail. Without human logistics coordination, trade efficiency was dropping across multiple sectors. Most troubling of all were the intelligence reports suggesting that humans were not struggling in isolation. Instead, they seemed to be thriving, establishing new colonies and making contact with species that the Council had never bothered to engage with. Chancellor Veltar stared out at the stars and wondered if the Galactic Council had just made the biggest mistake in its long history. 6 months had passed since humanity's withdrawal from Galactic Council space, and the galaxy was beginning to unravel in ways that no one had predicted. Chancellor Veltar stood in the Council's emergency session chamber, watching as delegates from across consortium space delivered one devastating report after another. The first speaker was Admiral Zektar of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet, his usual calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled frustration. "The pirate attacks have increased by 400%, he reported, his musical voice strained with exhaustion. "They are hitting trade routes that have been safe for centuries. Our patrol schedules cannot cover the areas that human ships were monitoring." Trade Master Kixmuth's multiple arms clicked nervously against his shell as he added his own grim news. The humans were providing escort services for cargo ships traveling through 17 different sectors. Without their protection, merchants are refusing to use those routes. We are losing millions of credits in trade revenue every day. What the Council had failed to realize was that humans had been doing far more than simple maintenance and logistics work. Human patrol ships, with their aggressive tactics and unpredictable strategies, had been keeping pirate activity suppressed across huge areas of space. Pirates from a dozen different species had learned to avoid any sector where human ships might be present, because humans fought differently than other species, where Zephyrian naval doctrine called for formal battle formations and predictable engagement patterns. Human captains used improvised tactics that confused and overwhelmed criminal forces. Where hegemony security relied on massive firepower and defensive positions, human ships used speed and cunning to strike where enemies least expected it. Dr. Kesara, now promoted to Chief Medical Coordinator for the Council, delivered the next piece of bad news. "The Altarian plague has spread to 3 more worlds," she announced. "Without human medical teams and their nanobotic treatments, we cannot contain the outbreak. Our traditional treatments are proving ineffective against the new strain." The plague had first appeared on the mining world of Altaria Prime 8 months ago. Consortium medical teams had tried everything in their vast databases of treatments, but the disease seemed to adapt to every cure they attempted. Then human doctors had arrived with a completely different approach, using tiny medical robots that could change their programming in real time to match the disease's adaptations. The human medical teams had not only stopped the plague, but had taught the nanobots to prevent future outbreaks. When the humans withdrew, they had taken their nanobots with them, leaving the consortium defenseless against the disease's return. But perhaps the most shocking report came from Chief Engineer Voxtel of the Zephyrian Technical Institute. "The mining operation on asteroid belt Omega 7 has completely collapsed," he announced, his voice filled with professional embarrassment. "The quantum extraction equipment has shut down entirely." Veltar leaned forward in his seat. "How is that possible? That equipment has been operating flawlessly for over 2 centuries. The human maintenance teams were using methods that our technical manuals said were impossible," Voxtel explained. "They were somehow making our ancient quantum systems work at 150% efficiency. When they left, they took their modifications with them. Without their constant adjustments, the equipment reverted to its original specifications and promptly broke down under the strain." The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. Humans had not been simple workers following alien instructions. They had been solving problems that the advanced species of the galaxy had simply learned to live with. Their fresh perspective and willingness to ignore conventional wisdom had led to innovations that other species had never imagined. Meanwhile, in the far reaches of the galactic rim, Captain Bobby Turner stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed human starbase at New Hope. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from a dozen different species moving through the busy space lanes around the station. "Contact report from the Exploration Division," announced Commander Walsh from the Communications Center. We have established formal diplomatic relations with the Corlin Federation, the Free Miners Guild, and the Independent Worlds Alliance. They are all interested in joining our Mutual Defense Pact. Turner smiled as he watched an alien cargo ship dock with the human station. These species had been ignored by the Galactic Council for various reasons. Some were considered too primitive, others too small to matter, still others too independent to be useful. But humans had approached them as equals, offering trade partnerships and mutual protection agreements instead of demands for tribute and submission. The Corlin Federation, for example, consisted of 3 species that had been rejected by the consortium because they insisted on democratic decision-making rather than hierarchical command structures. The Galactic Council found their constant debates and consensus-building inefficient, but humans understood the value of diverse perspectives working together. Dr. Amanda Bell was working in her new laboratory on the Human Research Station orbiting New Hope, developing technologies that would have been forbidden under consortium regulations. Without the restrictions imposed by galactic law, human scientists were making breakthroughs in quantum mechanics, biological engineering, and space-time manipulation. The new shield generators are working perfectly, she reported to Admiral Rodriguez during their weekly briefing. Our ships can now survive in the quantum storms near the galactic core, opening up entirely new regions for exploration. Any word from our deep space scouts? Rodriguez asked. Bell's expression grew serious. Commander Walsh has detected something disturbing from the long-range sensors. There appears to be a massive fleet approaching from outside our galaxy, moving through the intergalactic void toward consortium space. The approaching threat was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Ships that seemed to be made of living metal, propelled by engines that bent space-time in ways that violated known physics. They had already destroyed everything in their path across 3 neighboring galaxies, leaving nothing but empty space behind. Earth's intelligence services had intercepted consortium communications about the approaching fleet. The aliens called them the Devourers and estimated their arrival in 18 months. Council military leaders had studied the limited battle footage from other galaxies and realized their conventional tactics would be useless against this enemy back in consortium space. Chancellor Veltar received a private communication from Admiral Zektar. The military commander had been reviewing human combat records from their brief time working alongside consortium forces, and his findings were disturbing. Chancellor, I must speak plainly, Zektar said during their secure conference. Human military doctrine is unlike anything we have seen. Where we rely on established tactics and proven strategies, they improvise and adapt in real time. Where we use overwhelming force, they use precision and cunning. Their crews are trained to think independently rather than follow rigid protocols. What are you suggesting? Veltar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. If the intelligence reports about the Devourers are accurate, we will need every advantage we can get, Zektar replied. Human tactical thinking might be our only hope of survival. But Veltar knew that approaching humanity for help would require admitting that the Council had been wrong about human capabilities. It would mean acknowledging that the species they had dismissed as useful pets might actually be superior to the galaxy's ancient civilizations in the ways that mattered most. Meanwhile, 3 of the consortium's most important member species were conducting secret negotiations with human diplomats. The Corvan Republic, the Stellar Communes, and the Free Traders Guild had all realized that humanity offered something the Galactic Council never had: genuine partnership based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical dominance. As reports of the approaching threat spread through both human and consortium space, it became clear that the galaxy was about to face its greatest challenge. The question was whether the proud species of the Galactic Council would swallow their pride in time to seek help from the humans they had insulted, or whether they would face annihilation rather than admit their mistakes. In the depths of space, the Devourer fleet continued its relentless advance toward a galaxy that was no longer united, no longer confident, and no longer sure that their ancient ways would be enough to survive what was coming. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 6 hours straight, and Chancellor Veltar could see the fear in every delegate's eyes. The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed the latest intelligence reports about the Devourer fleet, and the news was worse than anyone had imagined. Admiral Zektar stood before the assembled delegates, his usually perfect posture showing signs of strain. The outer colonies of the Helix sector have gone completely silent, he reported. Long-range sensors detect no life signs, no energy signatures, nothing. The Devourers have consumed everything in their path. Trademaster Kixmoth's multiple arms trembled as he processed data on his personal tablets. The economic projections are catastrophic. If they continue at their current speed, they will reach the core consortium worlds in 14 months. Our combined fleets estimate a 60% chance of total defeat using conventional tactics. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions as delegates from dozens of species tried to comprehend the magnitude of the threat. The Devourers had already destroyed civilizations that were older and more technologically advanced than anything in their own galaxy. Their ships seemed immune to conventional weapons, and their tactics were completely unpredictable. Dr. Kesara activated another holographic display showing battle footage from the neighboring Andromeda Minor galaxy. The grainy images showed consortium-style ships engaging the strange, organic-looking vessels of the Devourers. The alien ships moved like living creatures, flowing around attacks and striking with precision that seemed almost intelligent. Their technology appears to be biological in nature, Kesara explained. Our computer models cannot predict their behavior patterns because they do not follow mechanical logic. They adapt to our tactics in real time, learning from each engagement. Chancellor Veltar watched the footage with growing dread. The ships of the Devourers looked like massive predators swimming through space, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light itself. When they fired their weapons, reality seemed to twist and bend around the energy beams. Entire planets simply vanished, not destroyed but somehow erased from existence. What about evacuation protocols? Asked the delegate from the Outer Rim territories. There's nowhere to evacuate to, Admiral Zektar replied grimly. The Devourers are coming from the direction of the galactic core, cutting off escape routes to the outer systems. By the time they reach us, they will have consumed most of the galaxy. After the session ended, Veltar retreated to his private chambers and activated his most secure communication system. The call he was about to make would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. But desperate times called for desperate measures. The holographic image of Admiral Frank Rodriguez materialized in the center of the room. The human admiral looked older than Veltar remembered, his hair now showing streaks of gray, but his eyes were alert and intelligent. Chancellor Veltar, Rodriguez said, his voice carefully neutral, "This is unexpected." Admiral Rodriguez. Veltar began, then paused. The words he needed to say felt like acid in his throat. The Galactic Council requests assistance with a mutual threat. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Mutual threat? Veltar transmitted the intelligence files about the Devourers, watching as the human admiral's expression grew increasingly serious. Rodriguez studied the data for several minutes before responding. This is indeed a serious threat, Rodriguez acknowledged. What exactly is the Council offering in exchange for human assistance? Full consortium membership with equal voting rights, Veltar said quickly. Favorable trade agreements, access to all galactic databases, and a formal apology for our previous ... Misunderstanding about humanity's capabilities? Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, and Veltar found himself holding his breath. Finally, the human admiral spoke. Chancellor, I appreciate the offer, but humanity has moved beyond needing consortium approval. We have established our own alliances, developed our own trade networks, and created our own path among the stars. Veltar felt his hope crashing down. Admiral, surely you understand that this threat endangers all life in the galaxy, including human colonies. We understand the threat perfectly, Rodriguez replied. Our deep space monitoring stations detected the Devourers 3 months ago. We have been preparing accordingly. Before Veltar could respond, Rodriguez continued. However, the Galactic Council made their position on humanity very clear 6 months ago. We are no longer interested in defending those who view us as useful pets. The communication ended, leaving Veltar staring at empty air. The human admiral had been polite but firm, and the message was unmistakable. Humanity would not come running to save the species that had insulted and dismissed them, but Rodriguez had not been entirely truthful about human intentions. On the bridge of the human command ship used Defiance, he was meeting with the leaders of what had become known as the Rim Alliance. 12 species that had been ignored or oppressed by the Galactic Council were now working together under human leadership. The Devourers represent a threat to all life in the galaxy, Rodriguez explained to the assembled delegates. We cannot allow them to succeed, regardless of our feelings about the consortium. Captain Lisa Chun activated a holographic display showing human deep space installations near the galactic rim. Our defensive preparations are nearly complete. The new shield generators Dr. Bell developed can protect entire star systems from the reality warping weapons the Devourers use. Commander Bobby Turner added his own report. The Rim Alliance fleet now includes over 3,000 ships from 15 different species. More importantly, our crews have been training together using human tactical doctrine. They can adapt and improvise in ways that consortium forces cannot. What the Galactic Council did not know was that humanity had been preparing for this conflict from the moment they detected the Devourers. Human military planners had studied every piece of available data about the invaders and developed new strategies, specifically designed to counter their adaptive tactics. Dr. Amanda Bell's research teams had created modular ship designs that could be reconfigured mid-battle to present new challenges to an adaptive enemy. Human training programs had taught alien crews to think independently and make decisions without waiting for orders from distant commanders. Meanwhile, in consortium space, three major species were making a decision that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The Corvan Republic, the Stellar Communes, and the Free Traders Guild had been conducting secret negotiations with human diplomats for months. Admiral Kexivan of the Corvan Republic transmitted an encrypted message to Admiral Rodriguez. The Corvan Republic formally requests admission to the Rim Alliance. We offer our full military and industrial capabilities in the fight against the Devourers. Similar messages arrived from the Stellar Communes and the Free Traders Guild within hours. Three of the most powerful consortium species were abandoning the Galactic Council to join humanity's Confederation. Back on the Council Station, Chancellor Veltar received reports of the defections with a mixture of rage and despair. The consortium was falling apart just when unity was most needed. Other species were beginning to question whether the Council's leadership was competent to handle the crisis. "Sir," his aide reported nervously, "we are receiving communications from 17 more member species requesting information about joining the Rim Alliance." Veltar realized that the galaxy was reshaping itself around humanity's vision of cooperative equals rather than the Council's hierarchical system of dominant and subordinate species. The very crisis that should have reinforced the need for strong central authority was instead proving that humans had been right all along. As the Devourer fleet continued its relentless advance, both the failing Galactic Council and the growing Rim Alliance prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of all life in the galaxy. The question was no longer whether humanity would help save the species that had rejected them, but whether those species would swallow their pride in time to accept human leadership in the fight for survival. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of consortium territory like a plague of living darkness. Their ships moved through space with an organic grace that defied everything the galaxy knew about physics and engineering. Within hours, the outer colonies began sending desperate distress calls before falling silent one by one. Admiral Zektar commanded the largest consortium fleet ever assembled from the bridge of his flagship, watching in horror as his carefully planned defensive formations crumbled under the alien assault. The Devourers fought like nothing in any tactical manual. Their ships flowed around attacks like water, striking weak points that should have been impossible to identify, adapting to every strategy almost before it could be implemented. "All squadrons maintain formation Delta 7, Zektar ordered. But even as he spoke, he could see the futility of rigid battle plans against an enemy that learned and evolved with every passing moment. The Devourer ships were beautiful in their terrible way, resembling massive deep-sea creatures more than mechanical vessels. Their hulls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to communicate complex information between ships. When they fired their reality-warping weapons, space itself seemed to scream in protest. Within 6 hours, half of the consortium fleet was gone, not destroyed in the traditional sense, but simply erased from existence as if they had never been. The survivors retreated in chaos, their command structure shattered and their morale broken. Chancellor Veltar received the devastating news in his emergency command center beneath the Council Station. Around him, delegates from the remaining consortium species sat in stunned silence as report after report confirmed their worst fears. "The outer defense grid has collapsed completely," reported Dr. Cassara, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Devourers are advancing toward the core systems. At their current rate, they will reach the capital worlds within days." Veltar stared at the tactical display showing the unstoppable advance of the alien fleet. Everything the Galactic Council had built over millions of years was about to be swept away by creatures that treated their most advanced technology like primitive toys. "Send an unconditional surrender to Admiral Rodriguez," Veltar said quietly. "Tell him we will accept any terms, agree to any conditions if humanity will help us survive this." But even as the message was transmitted, Veltar knew it might be too late. The pride and arrogance that had driven the Council to dismiss humanity as useful pets might have doomed them all. Meanwhile, Captain Lisa Chung stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, leading a combined human and Rim Alliance fleet toward the battle zone. The ships around her represented 15 different species, but they moved with a unity and purpose that the rigid consortium formations had never achieved. All ships, "This is Admiral Chun," she announced over the fleet communication system. "Remember your training. We are not fighting for territory or dominance. We are fighting for the right of all sapient life to exist in this galaxy. Trust your instincts, support your wingmates, and show these invaders what happens when they threaten our home." The human fleet had spent months preparing for this engagement. Dr. Amanda Bell's modular ship designs allowed vessels to reconfigure their weapons and defenses in real time. Human training doctrine had taught every crew member to think independently and adapt to changing circumstances without waiting for orders. When the two fleets met in the space around Kepler Prime, the same system where humanity had first been insulted by the Council, the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where the Consortium had fought with predictable formations and established tactics, the human-led alliance fought with creativity and improvisation. Commander Bobby Turner's tactical brilliance became apparent within minutes of engagement. Instead of meeting the Devourers head-on, he deployed his ships in constantly shifting patterns that prevented the aliens from adapting to any single strategy. When the Devourers tried to learn from one attack pattern, human ships had already switched to something completely different. "Target their communication nodes," Chun ordered, having identified the bioluminescent patches on the alien hulls as coordination systems. "Disrupt their ability to share tactical information." The strategy worked. Separated from their hive mind coordination, individual Devourer ships became confused and vulnerable. Human fighters, small and agile compared to the massive alien vessels, darted through their formations like angry wasps, striking precise targets that larger ships could never reach. Dr. Bell's quantum torpedoes, designed specifically to counter reality warping technology, tore through Devourer shields as if they were paper. The aliens' adaptive defenses, so effective against conventional weapons, could not adjust to weapons that operated on principles they had never encountered. Within hours, the tide of battle had turned. The Devourer fleet, seemingly invincible against Consortium forces, found themselves outmaneuvered and outfought by an enemy that refused to follow any established rules of warfare. Their retreat was swift and decisive, fleeing back toward the galactic edge with human ships in pursuit. In the aftermath of the battle, Chancellor Veltar found himself face-to-face with Admiral Rodriguez aboard the human flagship, the Zephyrian. Leader looked older and more fragile than Rodriguez remembered, his proud bearing finally broken by the magnitude of recent events. "Admiral Rodriguez," Veltar said formally, "the Galactic Council formally dissolves itself and requests permission to join the Rim Alliance under terms of complete equality." Rodriguez studied the alien leader for a long moment before responding. "Chancellor, the Rim Alliance is not interested in conquest or dominance. We believe that every species has something valuable to contribute when treated with respect and dignity." Jake Morrison, now serving as humanity's senior diplomat, stepped forward. "We propose the formation of a new galactic government based on the principles of mutual cooperation and shared decision-making. Every species, regardless of size or technological level, will have an equal voice in determining our common future." 6 months later, the Galactic Equality Accords were signed in a ceremony aboard the rebuilt Kepler Prime Station. Representatives from over 40 species, including former Consortium members and newly discovered civilizations from the Galactic Rim, came together to create something the galaxy had never seen before. A truly representative government. President John Carter of Earth delivered the keynote address to the assembled delegates. "Today we prove that strength comes not from dominating others but from lifting them up. Today we show that diversity is not a weakness to be managed, but a treasure to be celebrated. Today we begin building a galaxy where every voice matters." The ceremony concluded with the signing of the accords by every species representative. Chancellor Veltar, now simply Delegate Veltar representing the Zephyrian people as equals among equals, approached Jake Morrison afterward. "Ambassador Morrison," he said quietly, "I owe you and your species an apology that can never fully express the depth of our mistake." Jake smiled and extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Apology accepted, Veltar. Now let's build something better together." Years later, the rebuilt Kepler Prime Station bustled with activity as beings from dozens of species worked side by side. In the station's educational center, human and alien children played together while their parents collaborated on projects that would have been impossible under the old, hierarchical system. The galaxy had learned that true civilization was not about the dominance of the strong over the weak, but about the cooperation of all peoples working toward common goals. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through force or intimidation, but had shown by example that there was a better way to live among the stars. The age of galactic empires and subject species was over. The age of genuine partnership and mutual respect had begun, and the universe was a better place for all who dwelt within it.